Eliascu pushed open the door, still carrying the faint scent of antiseptic from the hospital, mingled with Lily Lynn the sweet fragrance of her favorite brand of baby lotion. He hadn't even taken off his suit jacket, striding straight to the center of the living room, his voice as icy as frozen shards, directed toward the empty staircase. Eliascu said, "Irishin, come downstairs." No response. Only the expensive floor clock in the living room ticked away, its second hand clicking rhythmically. Coldly measuring time, he frowned, his patience exhausted, and raised his voice again. "Irishin, I know you're home. Don't hide. Come out. Let's talk." Still, no one replied. Eliascu's brow knotted into a frown. This woman, who used to stay with great care in every corner of the house, always visible the moment he returned, with her head bowed and submissive, had now learned to put on airs. Was it because she knew Lily was pregnant, and was throwing a tantrum? A sliver of impatience flared in his chest, along with a trace of irritation he hadn't even noticed, anger at being ignored. Just then, the butler, Uncle Chin, hurried over from the side hall with a tea tray, his face bearing his usual respectful demeanor, but his eyes flickered slightly. Eliascu, without looking at him, unbuttoning the top button of his shirt, coldly instructed, "Uncle Chin, go get the madam down, now." Uncle Chin set down the tea tray, rubbing his hands together nervously. His voice slightly dry. "Master, the madam, she's not home, not home." Eliascu stopped mid-motion, finally turning his gaze to Uncle Chen's face, marked by scrutiny. "At this hour, where could she possibly be? Has she gone to the Shin household again? Or is she off doing those under-the-radar charity activities again?" His tone was filled with disdain. Irishin, that so-called career was never worth mentioning in his eyes. Chinbo lowered his head even more, his voice getting softer. Stammering, "No, it's not, madam. She didn't just go out temporarily, sir. Madam, she has already moved out for some time." "Move out?" Eliascu sounded as if he'd heard a joke, letting out a sneer. "She's throwing a tantrum and running away from home. Fine, she's grown up. Call her, tell her I'm not available to play her psychological games, tell her to come back immediately. I have something important to inform her." He walked to the liquor cabinet and poured himself a small half-glass of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling in the glass, thinking about what he was about to say. The slight annoyance he had felt earlier, due to Irishin's immaturity, was replaced by a sense of cold, inevitable detachment. Lily and the child were still waiting for him at the maternity center, expecting an official status. And he had to quickly remove Irishin as an obstacle. Chinbo stood rooted in place, a fine sheen of sweat appearing on his forehead. Eliascu waited a moment, not hearing Chinbo respond with a phone call, then turned around with a displeased expression. "What are you still standing there for?" Chinbo seemed to have made a great decision, suddenly lifting his head, the wrinkles on his aged face pressing together as he spoke quickly. "Sir, madam isn't throwing a tantrum. She really moved out. It was on the third night after you accompanied Miss Lin into the maternity center. Madam received a phone call, and then she packed her things and left. At that time, I wanted to inform you, but you had ordered that Miss Lin's postpartum period required absolute quiet, and no household matters were allowed to disturb her." Eliascu, his fingers gripping the wineglass, tightened slowly. The third night, that was nearly a month ago. This past month, he had devoted himself completely to Lily. Watching their son change day by day, filled with the joy of becoming a father and tender care for Lily, having completely forgotten about Irishin, he hadn't even thought to ask once how she was doing. A faint, peculiar sensation crept into her heart. Irishin, such a meek, passive person, could she really have moved away without a word, and for nearly a month already? But he quickly suppressed that feeling. Probably because he knew Lily had a son, he felt his position was threatened, and was protesting this way, or simply trying to get his attention. He frowned, emptied the cup in one gulp, the spicy liquid burning its way down his throat. Eliascu said, "All right, I understand. If she wants to make a scene, let her make it. Contact her now." no matter where she is, and tell her to meet me at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 a.m. tomorrow. He put down his wine glass, pulled a velvet box from his suit pocket, and casually tossed it onto the glossy coffee table. The box sprang open, revealing a diamond ring that reflected a cold gleam under the lighting. It was the one he had reluctantly bought for Irishan when they married. She had cherished it, wearing it like a treasure, until she removed it before moving out and left it on her vanity. Now, the ring had become the evidence of his command for her to come and divorce him. Elias Gu's voice was devoid of any warmth. Tell her to put on this ring. Lily and I's child needs to be registered. We can't delay it any further. Get the divorce papers tomorrow. Any compensation she's entitled to, I'll have my lawyer handle according to the agreement. Tell her not to play games and not to waste my time. After saying that, he turned to go upstairs to take a shower, wanting to wash away the smell from the hospital. The thought of being able to finally resolve things tomorrow, giving Lily and the child a proper status, made his steps even lighter. Sir, Chinbo's voice suddenly rose, trembling with something akin to terror, stopping him in his tracks. Elias Gu turned back impatiently. What now? Chinbo's face was deathly pale, his lips trembled, and his eyes dared not meet Elias Gu, instead fixating on the pattern of the carpet as if he wanted to bore a hole through it. He spoke each word slowly, as if using every ounce of his strength to push the words stuck in his throat out. Mr. Gu, Madam. Madam didn't leave on her own. That night, a car came. Some people got out and helped her move her luggage. Madam left with a man. Crack. Elias Gu, the empty wine glass he had been about to return to the wine cabinet, slipped from his hand, smashing onto the marble floor, shattering into pieces instantly. The crisp sound of breaking glass exploded in the unnervingly quiet living room. Painfully loud, he whirled around, staring fiercely at Chinbo, his eyes sharp as knives. What did you say? A man? What man? Chinbo felt his legs wobble under his gaze, nearly losing his balance, his voice trembling uncontrollably. It was a man who looked very distinguished. His car was very expensive, better than our family's. His subordinates called him Mr. Liu. The lady called him Felix. Mr. Liu, Felix. Elias Gu's mind went completely blank with a dull bang. Irishan had a social circle so simple it was almost bland. He could count them with his eyes closed. How could he possibly know some general surnamed Liu, and calling him so intimately Felix? No, that can't be. It must be old Chin whose eyes are failing, or Irishan, some actor he found who's deliberately provoking him. Yes, that must be it. How could that meek woman, who can't live without him, have another man, and even dare to leave with him? Elias Gu, his chest heaved violently. He forced down the sudden surge of anger, gritted his teeth, and managed to squeeze out through clenched jaws. And then, where did they go? Where is Irishan now? Old Chin was nearly in tears. He closed his eyes and hurled the last sentence like a bomb. I overheard that General Liu told his wife that the private jet had already been arranged, and they were leaving for abroad directly. They went to the airport that very night. Madam had already been taken abroad by her new husband, picked up and left the country. Those words, like thunderclaps laced with ice shards, struck Elias Gu without warning, brutally crashing down on his skull. He froze in place, his usual cold, disdainful, controlled expression instantly locking up and then shattering into pieces. Blood seemed to reverse its flow at that moment, rushing to his ears and making them buzz. For a split second, his vision even went black. Struck by lightning, he opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Chinbo's words echoed repeatedly in his mind. New husband, taken abroad, already, a month ago, when he was with Lily Lin, immersed in the joy of welcoming their child, planning how to make their mother and son enter the household in style, and how to deal with Irishan, his gentle, rabbit-like wife had actually already been taken away by another man. Under the name of new husband, taken to a foreign country he knew nothing about. How could this be? How dare Irishan, That Felix Liu, where did he come from again? A sensation unprecedented, blending shock, fury at being deceived, and a sharp, piercing anxiety he refused to admit even to himself, clenched his heart, making it hard for him to breathe. The living room was deathly quiet, with only the cold glint of glass shards on the floor and his suddenly labored breathing cutting through the silence. Next second, Elias Gu kicked over the antique side table beside him. The vase and decorations on it shattered with a loud crash, scattering across the floor. His eyes were red with fury, like a trapped beast thoroughly enraged but unable to find a target. He roared at Chen Bo, who was terrified out of his wits. Investigate. Go investigate immediately. Use every connection you have. Search the entire world if you must to find Irishan for me, and that man surnamed Liu. I want to know exactly where they are. No. Immediately, his roar echoed through the empty villa, no longer the cold composure he once had, now replaced with frantic desperation. On the coffee table, the lone diamond ring still shimmered with a cold, mocking glint. Elias Gu stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling window of his study, gazing at the cityscape he once took pride in, its lights brilliantly dazzling, yet now, in his eyes, it was just a distorted, wobbling blur of light. He held a freshly delivered preliminary investigation report in his hand, the edges of the paper crumpled from his grip, his fingertips cold. The cold, impersonal words on the report pierced his eyes like needles. Irishan left the Gu residence at 9:07 p.m. on the 15th of last month, taking only simple luggage. The escort vehicle was a black Maybach, whose license plate was verified to be registered under an offshore company abroad. At 11:20 p.m. on the same day, the vehicle entered the VIP channel of the international airport. Through retrieval of non-public records, it was confirmed that Irishan boarded a Gulfstream G650 private jet registered in the Cayman Islands at 11:50 p.m. that evening, departing for Zurich, Switzerland. The accompanying passenger was confirmed as an Asian male, whose identity information is highly encrypted, with the common pseudonym Felix Liu. Private jet, Switzerland, highly encrypted. Every word was wildly subverting Elias Gu's perception of Irishan, the woman who always kept her head down in front of him, dressed plainly, and hesitated for ages even when buying a decent bag. Was she really able to hop on a private jet and fly straight to Switzerland? That same Irishan who had barely experienced overseas travel at all. Liu Chen Zhou. Elias Gu squeezed out the name through his clenched teeth, his gaze sinister and terrifying. Who the hell is he? What gives him the right? He slammed the report onto the expensive rosewood desk, turned around, and shouted, "Investigate, keep investigating. What's the real story behind that Liu guy? And Irishan's exact location in Switzerland? What has she been doing this past month? I want details down to the minute." The assistant nervously agreed on the other end of the phone. Hanging up the phone, the study fell into silence. Elias Gu tugged irritably at his tie, yet the suffocating feeling welled up from within, lingering. He walked to the liquor cabinet, intending to pour a drink, but his hand stopped midair, inexplicably. Some scenes, long forgotten in the corners of his mind, even ones he had never paid attention to, suddenly surged up, uncontrollably. It was a rainy night 3 years ago. He and Irishan had been married for just over a year. Lily Lin was studying abroad. With no word from her, he had drunk too much at a social gathering and was taken home by the driver. It was Irishan who hurried out in slippers, struggling to support him. He vomited on her new home outfit, but she simply silently cleaned the floor in him, then went to the kitchen to cook him a soothing soup to sober up. He knocked over the soup bowl, spilling hot soup onto the back of her hand, turning it red instantly. He only frowned and said with disdain, "Clumsy, can't even hold a bowl properly." Irishan, what expression did she have at that moment? Elias Gu tried hard to recall, but all he remembered was how she quickly pulled her hand behind her back, lowered her head, and murmured, "Sorry, I'll get another bowl." He didn't speak again and fell into a deep sleep on the sofa. Later, he learned that her hand had blistered from the scald and it took several days to heal. But she never said a word about it. Another time was on his mother's birthday. Lily Lynn suddenly called, crying that she was sick in a foreign country and felt lonely and helpless. He immediately left Irishan, who was busy preparing for his mother's birthday banquet, rushed to the airport, managed to buy the fastest available ticket, and flew for over 10 hours to comfort his Lily. When he returned a week later, his mother was furious, and the birthday banquet turned into a mess. Naturally, he took out his anger on Irishan. "Can't you be more attentive? It's such a big deal, your mother-in-law's birthday, and you, as a daughter-in-law, can't even manage it properly." Irishan, she was in the middle of arranging a fresh bouquet when she heard this, and with a sharp click, the scissors in her hand snapped off a fully bloomed lily. With her back to him, her shoulders trembled slightly. After a long pause, she finally murmured quietly, "It's my fault." Her back. Thin and silent, at that moment, he felt even her grievances seemed dull and lifeless, monotonous, lifeless. Elias Gu murmured the words he had once firmly believed in, but somewhere in his heart, a memory's scissors gently snipped, sending a sharp, unfamiliar pang of pain. If she were truly that boring, would that mysterious Felix Liu be blind? He abruptly shook his head, trying to dispel these inappropriate images. No. Irishan must be faking it. Her docility and humility in front of him over the past 3 years might all have been an act, meant to lull him into a false sense of security, then climb to higher ground. This cunning woman. Just then, the phone he had left on the table rang sharply. It was Lily Lynn. Elias Gu took a deep breath, forcing down his turbulent emotions, and answered the phone, his voice deliberately soft. "Hello, Lily, why aren't you asleep? Did the baby bother you?" On the other end of the line, Lily Lynn's voice carried the delicate fragility typical of someone who had just given birth, along with a barely perceptible note of urgency and sadness. "Elias, I can't sleep. I feel anxious. Did you see Irishan? Did she agree to the divorce? Our baby can't remain nameless and stateless forever." Normally, hearing Lily Lynn's voice trembling with tears would have made Elias Gu immediately ache with pity, desperate to sweep the whole world under her feet. But now, all he could see was Irishan's flushed cheek as she bowed her head and said, "I'm sorry," and the shivering of her shoulders as she cut the flowers. A wave of inexplicable annoyance surged through him. Elias Gu's tone unconsciously softened. "Yes, we're talking. There are some procedural issues that need time to sort out. You focus on resting and recovering after childbirth. Don't worry about these things. It's bad for your health." Lily Lynn seemed to sense something off in his tone. Pausing for a moment, her voice turning even more upset, "Elias, are you getting tired of me? I know, after having the baby, I haven't regained my figure. I'm not as good looking as before. If you still have feelings for her, I can take the baby and leave. I won't make things difficult for you." Her voice trailed off as she began to sob quietly. In any other circumstance, Elias Gu would have already been soothing her with gentle words, but today, the sound of her sobs made his temples throb painfully. Irishan didn't seem to have ever cried like this before, at least, not in front of him. He rubbed his brow, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Lily, don't entertain such absurd thoughts. I said I'll take care of it. I will rest for now. I still have things to handle on my end." "Not equal," Lily Lynn said, and then she quickly hung up the phone. The study fell silent once more. But Elias Gu could no longer calm his mind. As if driven by some unseen force, he opened a photo album on his phone, an album he rarely ever accessed, one that contained automatic cloud backups with a few scattered images. His scrolling fingers suddenly stopped. It was a blurry photo, resembling a corner of a surveillance capture. The background appeared to be the dining room at home. Irishan was wearing an apron, sitting alone at one corner of the large dining table, a bowl of apparently cold rice in front of her. She was looking down holding her chopsticks, but hadn't moved for a long while. Outside the window, the dazzling fireworks of New Year's Eve illuminated her profile, brilliant and lively lights, yet they only accentuated an indescribable loneliness and pallor on one side of her face. The photo date was 3 years ago on New Year's Eve. Eliascu remembered that day, when Lily Lynn was in a bad mood on the phone. So he flew to Paris to comfort her and spent the new year with her. He completely forgot that there was someone else at home. He didn't even call her at that time. Eliascu stared at the photo, his fingers unconsciously tightening, the phone screen dimming under his grip. The unfamiliar jab in his heart came again, clearer and stronger this time. Irishan, he murmured the name, and for the first time, the 3 characters tasted slightly bitter in his mouth. Just then, the study door was gently knocked on. "Come in." Eliascu quickly locked his phone screen and regained his cold, composed expression. The assistant pushed the door open, looking slightly strange, and carefully placed a tablet in front of him. "Mr. Gu, we obtained some scattered information about Mrs. Shin, through some special channels in Switzerland, mostly footage taken in public places." Eliascu snatched the tablet. The screen lit up, displaying a slightly blurred photo taken from a distance by paparazzi. The background showed the entrance of a luxury jewelry store by the shores of Lake Zurich. In the center of the photo stood a woman in a flawlessly tailored cream-colored long dress, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, slightly turning her head to look at the man beside her. Even with the poor image quality, Eliascu immediately recognized her as Irishan, but she was nothing like the dull, subdued Irishan he remembered in the photo. She stood tall and elegant, her neck long and graceful. Her profile sharply defined and beautifully graceful. Under the sunlight, her skin was so fair it seemed to glow. The hat lent her an air of mystery and nobility, and the slight upward tilt of her chin carried a demeanor, Eliascu, that he had never seen before, relaxed yet confidently self-assured. Next to her stood a man in a custom-tailored suit, upright and poised, leaning slightly forward as he listened intently to her. His hand, in a posture that was both protective and possessive, rested gently on the small of her back. Even from the blurry side profile, one could sense the aura of dominance, and the deep regard he held for the woman beside him. "This man is Felix Liu." The timestamp beneath the photo shows it was taken 10 days ago. That means, while he was bustling around for Lily Lynn and the children, filled with plans for the future, Irishan was being so carefully and tenderly accompanied by another man. Leisurely selecting jewelry in one of the world's most bustling cities, bang, Eliascu's other hand slammed hard onto the desk. The solid wood surface let out a dull, thunderous sound, and the back of his hand immediately turned red, but he felt no pain, eyes instantly filled with bloodshot veins, staring intently at the unfamiliar, glaring smile on Irishan's face in the photo. And the hand of Felix Liu placed on her waist. Originally, she wasn't incapable of smiling, nor was she devoid of brilliance. It's just that her smile and brilliance were never meant for him. Eliascu, 3 years of marriage, all he gave was coldness, neglect, and a sense of entitlement and taking. Yet that Felix Liu, who appeared out of nowhere, managed to transform her in such a short time, making her blossom into such dazzling beauty. Jealousy, like a venomous snake, gnawed at his heart. Anger surged like molten lava within his chest, and a deeper, more profound panic, named loss, began to spread uncontrollably. He thought he had discarded an uninteresting stone, but turned around to find that someone else was holding it tenderly in their hands, carefully wiping it clean, revealing that within was a rare and precious jade. "Irishan, do you really think you can just walk away and fly off with another man?" Eliascu stared at the photo, his voice a hoarse whisper rising from the depths of his throat, every word soaked in coldness and madness. "You'll never get away with it. Investigate, keep a close eye on them." He suddenly raised his head, his eyes bloodshot as he turned to his assistant. "I want to know every detail of their plans, and get my private jet ready." "Switzerland, right. I'm going there myself to bring my Mrs. Gu home." He deliberately emphasized the words Mrs. Gu, as if doing so could erase the impact of that photograph and force the woman who was beginning to glow back into the dull, shadowy mark that belonged to him. The air in Zurich carried a clean, detached scent, completely different from London's damp heaviness. I pushed my small suitcase, my steps unconsciously lightening. Felix Liu walked beside me, not letting his assistant or bodyguards handle the luggage. He held a sleek carry-on in one hand, while the other rested naturally on my suitcase handle. Occasionally, he'd quietly ask, "Tired?" or "We'll rest once we're on the plane." Such small, ordinary acts of care, in the past 3 years, I could hardly even imagine as a luxury. A boarding announcement rang out on the loudspeaker, indicating that passengers in first class for our flight could board first. Felix Liu turned his head to look at me, a gentle smile in his eyes. "Let's go. Home, home." The word made my heart give a slight tremble, then wrapped me in warmth. Yes, back to our home, in London. We had barely reached the entrance of the VIP channel, not yet having shown our boarding passes, when a voice, familiar enough to make my bones freeze with dread, concealing a massive storm, pierced through from behind like a poisoned, ice-cold dagger. Irishan. My spine froze instantly, and my blood seemed to turn half-cold, even though I had prepared myself mentally. Knowing that Elias Gu would never let this go easily, hearing that voice echo in a foreign land still triggered a physiological suffocating pressure. Felix Liu, his hand, resting on the railing, immediately moved down and firmly grasped my hand. His palm was broad, warm, and the firm grip instantly dispelled the chill from my fingertips. He paused slightly, pulling me toward his side, then slowly turned around. I also turned around. A few steps away, Elias Gu stood there. He must have flown in overnight. His suit was creased, dark circles shadowed under his eyes, and stubble dotted his jaw, but none of this dishevelment compared to his gaze now, locked onto me, burning with shock, fury, jealousy, and a near obsessive, crimson certainty that I belonged to him. His gaze first shot sharply to my hand held by Felix Liu, then moved to my face, as if seeing me truly for the first time. Today I'm dressed simply, a smoky pink knit dress with a coat of the same color family over it, my hair loosely piled up, and just a touch of light makeup on my face, but I know it's completely different from how I used to shrink in on myself, trying to stay unnoticed whenever I was with him. It was Felix Liu who slowly pulled me out of that shell, telling me, "Iris, you deserve all the good things in life." Elias Gu's pupils constricted sharply, and within them, besides anger, there seemed to flash a fleeting sense of unfamiliarity, so quick he didn't even notice it himself. How could the pale, dull Irishan from his memory be this radiant, composed woman before him, her eyes calm and even distant? But his daze lasted only a moment. Fury quickly consumed all other emotions. Elias Gu stepped forward abruptly, completely disregarding Felix Liu, staring only at me. His voice hoarse from forcing it out, "Irishan, come back with me." The tone of the command was exactly the same as it had been over the past 3 years, like I was merely a personal item he had accidentally left behind, something he could pick up again at any time. I didn't speak, just stared at him quietly. It was strange, those eyes, which once filled me with such fear that I couldn't meet his gaze, now looked only pathetic and weary. I could even clearly see the faint twitch of his lips. Stirred by his excitement, Felix Liu gently squeezed my hand, stepped forward half a pace, and completely shielding me behind him. He was slightly taller than Elias Gu and, with his calm demeanor born from long years at the top, now suppressed his gentleness, transforming it into an invisible pressure facing Elias Gu's fury. Felix Liu spoke, his voice low but clear, carrying a cold edge. "Mr. Gu, please show some respect. You've frightened my wife, madam." Elias Gu seemed burned by those 2 words, sharply turning his gaze to Felix Liu. His eyes dark and terrifying. "She is my Elias Gu's legal wife. Who do you think you are, calling her madam?" "Felix Liu, is that right? I don't care who you are. Irishan belongs to me. Let go of her now, or I'll make sure you can't survive anywhere, domestically or abroad," he threatened boldly, trying to intimidate others with his past power, but he didn't know what kind of being he was facing. Felix Liu heard this and let out a faint smile, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Instead, adding a chill to his expression, he didn't even bother to speak more to Elias Gu and merely turned his head slightly, speaking briefly in English to the two tall men in airport security uniforms who had quietly approached. Though their demeanor was clearly different, from behind, the two men immediately stepped forward, one on each side, standing politely but firmly between Elias Gu and us. Elias Gu, when had he ever been treated like this, especially in front of his woman? He instantly erupted in anger, pushing away the person blocking his way. "Get out of my way. Do you know who I am? I am Elias Gu, Irishan. Are you just going to stand there and let these outsiders treat me like this? Come here." He tried to bypass security and reach out to pull me. I hadn't spoken until then, only now slightly leaning out from behind Felix Liu, looking at Elias Gu's face twisted with anger and urgency. Around the airport VIP corridor, a few passengers had already begun to glance over. My voice was calm, without excitement, without fear, not even hatred, just complete detachment and declaration. "Elias Gu, do I need to remind you, by the time you were accompanying Lily Lin during her confinement and planning how to push me out of her way, I had already unilaterally filed for divorce. The lawyer's letter should have long reached your company. As for your unilateral silence and delays, they don't affect the actual breakup of our marriage. The man standing beside me now is my husband, Mr. Felix Liu. Legally, perhaps some formalities remain unfinished, but in my heart, I've long settled everything with you. Please, don't come harassment me and my family again." Settled family. Elias Gu seemed to hear something absurd, his bloodshot eyes fixed fiercely on me. "Irishan, you talked to me about settling. 3 years. I supported you for 3 years. And now you're dressed so fancy, flying private jets. Do you think all this is paid for with my hard-earned money and that young gigolo?" His words became increasingly offensive. Felix Liu's face darkened. I no longer hesitated, stepping completely out from behind Felix Liu and standing shoulder to shoulder with him. I raised my head, meeting Elias Gu's malicious gaze, and suddenly gave a soft smile. Irishan said, "Elias Gu, you take care of me. For these 3 years, I've lived in your house. And I've eaten and used your things, fine, but I've also been your 24-hour on-call free babysitter, your mother's instant punching bag, and your drink-induced emotional outlet. Have you ever given me even a penny in wages? Do you remember my birthday? Do you know what I'm allergic to?" I paused, looking at his suddenly stiff expression, and continued in a clear voice, making sure everyone around with ears perked up could hear. "And you said I used your money. That's ridiculous. The card you gave me at our wedding, I never touched a cent of it. I'll return it to you unchanged in the divorce agreement. As for everything I have now," I turned my head and glanced at Felix Liu, who had always been as steady as a mountain beside me. A wave of courage and warmth welled up inside me. I turned back and said to Elias Gu, word by word, "It's all because of Felix. What he gives, I accept with peace of mind. Because with him, I'm not a nanny, not a punching bag. And definitely not a substitute for anyone. I am Irishan, his legally wedded wife, cherished and treasured." Elias Gu was speechless at my words, his face ashen, his chest heaving violently, his trembling finger pointing at me. He probably had never in his life heard me speak so much at once, let alone with such calmness, tinged with pity and scorn. The faint murmurs and stares around him pierced his last remnants of pride like needles. He completely lost his mind and suddenly tried to rush forward, but was firmly held back by the 2 security guards. Felix Liu finally spoke again, his gaze sweeping over Elias Gu, who was still struggling and restrained, as if dismissing a piece of insignificant trash. He turned to the security personnel and said, "This gentleman is out of control and may pose a threat to others. Please make sure he stays away from my wife and me in the boarding area." If he continues with any further aggressive behavior, notify the local authorities immediately. After saying that, he didn't spare Eliascu another glance, gently yet firmly wrapping his arm around my shoulder and turning to walk toward the VIP entrance. Irishan, don't go, come back, I won't let you leave, Eliascu yelled hysterically behind, his voice filled with frustration, rage, and a hint of panic and desperation he himself refused to acknowledge. Do you think he can protect you forever? You wait, I won't let you get away with this, Irishan. His roar echoed through the airport's vast, high-ceilinged space, sounding so weak and absurd. I didn't turn back. 1 step, 2 steps, I walked through the passage, leaving behind that hysterical man and my 3 miserable years. The door of the passage slowly closed, cutting off all the noise. Felix Liu stopped, gently cupping my face with both hands, his fingertips brushing across a tear that I didn't even notice had fallen. His eyes were deep and focused, filled with gentle sorrow and unwavering determination. Felix Liu said, Iris, it's all over now. From this moment on, I will hold the sky for you. I nodded vigorously and leaned into his embrace. This time, the tears were warm, torn in farewell, yet even more so in newborn hope. Outside the passageway, Eliascu, escorted aside by airport security and helplessly watching us vanish, stood frozen, his face ashen and lifeless. In those crimson eyes, only the madness born of shattered dignity and an endless void remained. The more than 10 hours flight from Zurich back home were agony for Eliascu, each minute a torture in hell. The spacious first-class seat felt like a bed of nails, and the flight attendant's gentle inquiries sounded like noise. What replayed endlessly in his mind was Irishan's calm, almost indifferent eyes, the possessive and protective way Felix Liu had stepped in to take her away, and the crushing humiliation of being roughly held back by security at the airport like a clown. What choked him even more were the words Irishan had spoken: free nanny, punching bag, tool. Each word was like a rusty, dull knife scraping at his heart. So, to her, those 3 years had been so worthless. He had given her the title of Madame Gu and a life of luxury. What more could she want? Another voice screamed in his mind, if she really was so worthless, why did that Felix Liu treat her like a treasure? Why, after leaving him, did she seem like a dusty pearl suddenly polished clean, radiating such blinding brilliance? Jealousy and a fury of utter denial and contempt burned fiercely in his chest, nearly overwhelming him, but deep within that fire, a cold thread of doubt slithered out like a poisonous snake. Had Irishan's transformation truly been caused only by meeting Felix Liu? Or had she always possessed that side of herself, deliberately suppressed while she was with him? Or was it him? Was he blind, never truly seeing her at all? No, impossible. Eliascu violently downed a sip of strong liquor, trying to extinguish the thought that only made him angrier. It had to be that Felix Liu had somehow bewitched her. It had to be. The plane touched down, and the city's damp, cold air hit him. But it didn't clear his mind at all. He dragged his exhausted, irritable body not home, not to the office, but, inexplicably, drove straight to the building where Lily Lin and the children were staying at the maternity center. He didn't rush up right away. Sitting in the car, he looked at the warmly decorated building, for the first time feeling a faint sense of disorientation. He had once thought this place was the beginning of happiness, a haven he had built for his beloved woman and son. But now, it felt more like an ironic witness. He took out his phone, the screen displaying the latest message from his assistant. Besides failing to uncover Felix Liu's core background, one piece of information caught his attention. Mr. Gu, following your instructions, we rechecked Ms. Lin's pregnancy and childbirth records, and found slight anomalies in a few blood type reports within the hospital archives. Discrepancies in the timestamps for entry versus the examination times. Further verification has been arranged. Additionally, Ms. Lin had used her supplementary card for several high-value purchases during her pregnancy, including occasions of shopping for high-end men's fashion and luxury watches, items inconsistent with typical maternal needs. The purchase locations were mostly in the newly developed area of the eastern city. Deviating from her usual residence and range of activities, blood type report discrepancies, purchases inconsistent with maternal needs. The Eastern New District, Elias Gu's brow twitched sharply. Some details he had overlooked suddenly surged to the forefront of his mind. Lily Lin had experienced severe morning sickness early in her pregnancy, constantly clinging to him, but in the middle trimester, for about 2 or 3 months, she had been unusually understanding, saying she didn't want to disturb his work, often claiming she had gone out with friends for relaxation or had returned to her parents' home for a short stay. At the time, he had thought she was considerate. Also, once he went to the Eastern New District to meet a client on short notice, and seemed to spot a figure from a distance that looked very much like Lily Lin, walking into a boutique hotel, arm in arm with a man. At that moment, his phone rang, and when he looked up again, the person had disappeared. He didn't think much of it at the time, only assumed he had misseen. Now, thinking back, a chill shot up my spine. He suddenly pushed open the car door and strode quickly into the maternity center. In the luxury suite, Lily Lin was half leaning against the headboard, playfully teasing her son in the crib, a gentle smile on her face. Seeing him enter, her eyes lit up, and she instantly assumed a wounded, dependent expression. "Elias, you're back. Why did it take so long? Did everything go smoothly? Did Irishan sign it?" she said. About to get out of bed to greet him, Elias Gu stood where he was, his sharp gaze sweeping over her face, trying to find any trace of guilt. His silence and cold scrutiny caused Lily Lin's smile to stiffen. "Elias, what's wrong? You look so pale. Is it that bitch Irishan doing something again?" Lily Lin stepped forward, trying to take his hand, her voice trembling with tears. "Don't worry, no matter what she does, I and the baby will always be by your side. If it were before..." Elias Gu would have already held her in his arms and comforted her gently. But now, hearing her repeatedly calling him bitch and tricks, and comparing it to Irishan's cold and almost cruel statement at the airport, he felt only an indescribable annoyance. He avoided her hand, walked to the crib, and looked at the sleeping infant inside. The child was tiny, with delicate eyebrows and eyes. For the first time, he looked at them so closely, yet suddenly realized that, perhaps, they didn't quite resemble his own. That thought made his heart abruptly contract. "Was the child good today?" he asked in a dry voice. Lily Lin noted the change in his demeanor. Growing more uneasy, she moved closer to him and spoke gently. "You're quite good, just a little prone to crying. The nurse said it might be heredity from you. You must have been mischievous as a child too." Elias Gu didn't respond, but suddenly asked, "Lily, that time when you were pregnant, after we were together, I remember you took emergency contraception." Lily Lin, her face paled for a moment, but she quickly recovered, playfully hitting him. "Oh, why bring that up all of a sudden? Maybe the medicine didn't work. Otherwise, how could we have our precious son? This just proves fate wants us to be together." The excuse sounded reasonable, but the momentary panic in her expression did not escape Elias Gu's hypersensitive eyes at this moment. Just then, his phone shook a little. He walked to the window, his back to Lily Lin, and opened it. It was an enlarged surveillance screenshot sent by his assistant. Though blurry, it clearly showed Lily Lin affectionately leaning into a tall man in front of a boutique hotel in the eastern part of the city, the very time she had claimed to return to her family home. And the man's profile. Elias Gu's pupils suddenly contracted. He suddenly turned around, his gaze dark and terrifying, staring intensely at Lily Lin. Lily Lin felt uneasy under his gaze and forced a smile, saying, "Elias, what's wrong with you? Don't look at me like that. I'm scared." Elias Gu stepped closer, his voice unnervingly low. Lily Lin, tell me honestly, is the child really mine? What did you say? Lily Lin cried out, stunned as if struck by lightning, her eyes widening in disbelief, tears welling up instantly. Elias Gu, how could you ask me that? I've endured so much, sacrificed so much for you, no name, no status, countless hardships, finally giving birth to our child. And now you dare to doubt me. Did Irishan say something to you, that vile woman? Because she can't have you, she wants to destroy us. She wept bitterly, her sorrow like rain on pear blossoms. In any other circumstance, Elias Gu would have softened, but now, seeing her familiar dramatic sobbing routine, he felt only disgust and hypocrisy. Whether it's mine or not, a test will tell, Elias Gu said coldly, pulling out his phone to make the call and arrange a paternity test. No. Lily Lin lunged forward, trying to snatch the phone from his hand, her voice piercing. Elias Gu, you can't humiliate me like this, you can't. Her fierce opposition was like a heavy hammer, shattering the last shred of hope in Elias Gu's heart. The two were pulling at each other when the door suddenly burst open. Elias Gu's mother, Madame Gu, the eldest lady of the family, walked in carrying numerous bags of health supplements. Beaming, oh my dear grandson, have you been good today? Grandma has brought you so many. Elias Lily, what are you two doing? Madame Gu froze as she saw the two struggling in the room. Lily Lin seemed to see a lifeline and immediately threw herself at Madame Gu's feet, sobbing uncontrollably. Auntie, you must speak up for me. Elias he believed Irishan's lies, and doubts whether the baby is his. He wants to take the baby for some kind of paternity test. Isn't that killing me? The baby is so little, how can he endure such torment? Wah! Upon hearing this, Gu's mother's expression darkened. She had always favored the sweet-talking, capable Lily Lin and utterly looked down on the quiet Irishan, now that her grandson had already been born. How could her son suddenly make such a scene? Gu's mother looked at Elias Gu disapprovingly. Elias, what nonsense are you up to? Lily gave birth to your son. She's a great contributor to our Gu family. Instead of cherishing her properly, you're suspicious and paranoid. Has that jinx, Irishan, been causing trouble again? I always said she's not a peaceful sort. Hearing his mother's baseless accusations, Elias Gu's anger finally boiled over, pointing at Lily Lin, who was sobbing and trembling. He shouted at his mother, Mom, what do you know? She used my card during pregnancy to buy clothes and watches for other men. She was caught hugging and cuddling with another man at a hotel. Who knows if this child is even mine? What? Gu's mother was struck as if by lightning, the health supplements in her hand clattering to the ground. She abruptly looked down at Lily Lin kneeling on the floor, her gaze swiftly shifting from shock to fury and disgust. Lily, is what Elias said true? I didn't do it, Auntie. I'm being framed. It was Irishan who set me up. Lily Lin stammered in panic, denying the accusation. Wronged. Elias Gu sneered, holding up the surveillance screenshot on his phone in front of the two. Look for yourself. What is this? Gu's mother squinted and leaned in for a closer look. Though blurry, she was certain she wouldn't mistake her own son. The intimate pose of Lily Lin and that man in the picture was like a loud slap across her face. She had always thought Lily Lin was just a little cunning, but truly cared for her son. She never expected, thinking about how she had been proudly showing off her grandson everywhere lately, and recalling the things she had done to force Irishan out and make room for Lily Lin. If the grandson wasn't truly from the Gu family, Gu's mother suddenly felt her vision darken and nearly fainted. You shameless slut. Gu's mother snapped back, her past fondness instantly turning into the most vicious curse. Trembling with rage, she pointed at Lily Lin's nose and shouted, I was blind. I actually thought you were decent. I never imagined you'd be even more lowly than that silent fool Irishan, using our Gu family's money to support some bastard lover, and you still dare to want our Gu family to raise your illegitimate child. Dream on. No, Aunt, please let me explain. Lily Lin tried to struggle. Explain what? Get out. Take your bastard and leave here immediately. Don't dirty my Goo family's place, Goo's mother shrieked, her earlier kindness completely gone, replaced by rage from being deceived and extreme fear of the family's reputation being damaged. Elias, son, get a paternity test right away. If it's true, I'll make sure this whore can't stay in this city. Elias Goo stared at the chaotic, grotesque scene before him, Lily Lynn weeping and screaming, her furious mother raging, then recalled the calm, resolute figure of Irishan at the airport and Felix Lewis' protective stance. An unprecedented sense of absurdity and exhaustion overwhelmed him like a tidal wave. The true love he had meticulously nurtured turned out to possibly be an outright deception. The marriage he had discarded like trash was cherished by others as a precious treasure. He, Elias Goo, seemed to have become a huge joke. London's early autumn rain, with its chill, was kept outside by the bright studio lights and the warm texture of the fabric. I sat at my wide workbench, my fingertips gliding over the last delicate golden leaf that needed to be hand-stitched. This was an evening gown, my design, about to appear at the country's most prestigious charity gala, as the exclusive custom piece for the grand finale auction, and my Irishan first official debut in the nation's highest social circles under the independent designer name Shin. Felix Liu pushed the door open, carrying a cup of warm honey water. He quietly set it beside me without interrupting, standing a few steps behind me, his gaze falling on the piece slowly taking shape beneath my hands, his eyes brimming with unhidden admiration and pride. Felix, look here. I didn't look up, pointing to the chain of small diamonds embedded along the waistline. Does it feel too flashy? I want to convey moonlit lake reflections, gentle yet powerful, not just dazzling brightness. Felix Liu stepped closer, leaning down to examine it carefully. His warm breath brushed against my earlobe, bringing a sense of calm. Felix Liu said, "It's just right, Iris. Your instincts are always right. It's beautiful, just like you." He paused, his voice growing softer. "Are you nervous? We're flying back tomorrow." I stopped stitching, lifting my head to meet his deep and inclusiveness eyes. Nervous, maybe a little, but more than that, there was a sense of tranquility after all the chaos, and a hint of anticipation at finally putting my past to rest with my own hands. I shook my head and took his hand. "With you here, I'm not afraid. I just want to go see it, in my own way. Look at that world that once suffocated me, what remains of it in my eyes now." Felix Liu, he grabbed my hand with a firm grip, saying, "Sure, I'll go with you. We'll watch whatever you want, and we'll let whomever you want see us." The charity gala was held in the banquet hall of the most prestigious century-old hotel in Yucheng. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the hall as if it were broad daylight, with elegant guests mingling, drinks clinking, and laughter echoing. Politicians, business magnates, literary and artistic luminaries, and scions of prominent families gathered together, filling the air with a unique aura of money, power, and refined artistry. I and Felix Liu arrived neither too early nor too late. I linked arms with him and slowly entered the venue. Instead of my auction item, I wore another dress I designed, one long silk gown in smoky blue, with extremely simple lines and no unnecessary embellishments, its hem flowing like water with every step. Elias, as though carrying a serene night sky on my body, my hair was loosely tied up, with two tiny teardrop-shaped diamonds dangling from my ears, gifts from Felix Liu, who said they resembled my tears but hoped I would one day weep only for joy. We didn't try to draw attention, but Felix Liu's presence naturally commanded it. As soon as he appeared, countless eyes turned toward him. When those gazes landed on me beside him, there were expressions of surprise, curiosity, inquiry, and scrutiny, each distinct yet layered. "Mr. Liu, Mrs. Liu, welcome, welcome." The host of the banquet, a respected elder in the business world, stepped forward personally, warmly shaking hands with Felix Liu and then turning to me, his smile genuine. "So this is designer Shin. I've heard so much about you. I never expected Mrs. Liu to be so young and accomplished." The design of Moonlit Lake Glow, Our judging panel was utterly captivated by it. It's sure to be the highlight of the evening. I smiled and nodded politely in response. You're too kind. Mr. Chen, it's my honor to be part of such a grand event. As we exchanged pleasantries, several people gathered around to chat with Felix Liu. He remained calm and somewhat distant, but whenever others introduced me, he would subtly shift his position, gently bringing me into the center of the conversation. His demeanor clearly reflected respect and protection. Soon, everyone in the circle knew that this mysterious Mr. Liu cherished and guarded his designer wife with great care. I could feel that the gazes directed at me gradually shifted from curiosity to approval, even tinged with a hint of envy. This respect, purely based on my own identity and the influence of Felix Liu, was a stark contrast to the past 3 years spent at the Gu household, where I had only received scrutiny and contempt as Mrs. Gu, relying on the title to gain acceptance. Just then, a slight commotion surfaced at the entrance of the banquet hall. My fingers, holding the champagne glass, gave an almost imperceptible twitch, then quickly returned to normal. I didn't need to turn around to feel that sudden, scorching gaze, so intense it felt like it could burn 2 holes straight through my back. Felix Liu's hand gently pressed against my waist in a reassuring manner. I glanced up and gave him a faint smile. I'm fine. Elias Gu had arrived. Beside him was not Lily Lin, but a famous actress from his company, clearly chosen as a token companion for appearances. He looked even more haggard than he had in Zurich. His high-end suit couldn't conceal the deep weariness and hostility radiating from within. His eyes scanned through the crowd and locked onto me, filled with shock, greed, disbelief, and a jealousy so thick it nearly suffocated. He probably never dreamed that he would see me, so radiant and effortlessly navigating the inner circles, here, at this elite event where he had to struggle to get in and constantly thought about expanding his network. He almost instinctively wanted to walk toward me, but as soon as he took a step, too familiar, perhaps formerly subservient, bosses intercepted him to exchange pleasantries. The 2 men had their backs to me, but I could see Elias Gu's clearly distracted and impatient expression, his gaze drifting toward me repeatedly. I calmly turned my eyes away, treating him as an unimportant stranger, and continued to chat quietly with a well-known gallery owner beside me about the possibilities of using contemporary art in textiles. The gallery owner was highly impressed by my insights, nodding repeatedly. The auction began. Donated items were presented one after another, and bidding rose in waves. The atmosphere grew increasingly lively. My work, Moonlit Lake, was unveiled as the grand finale auction item. As the model walked onto the runway wearing a gown blending silk, chiffon, and exquisite hand embroidery, with the design resembling moonlight scattering shards of silver and flowing gold across the lake's surface, the audience erupted into a hushed murmur of admiration. The auctioneer enthusiastically introduced the design concept and the background of the designership, naturally omitting my real name and past, then announced the start of the bidding. The starting price was already high, but bidders were enthusiastic, and the price kept rising, quickly reaching a figure that shocked many. Elias Gu sat not far away, his expression growing darker and darker. He looked at my highly acclaimed piece, at the model glowing on stage. What would that dress look like on me? Then at my calm, smiling profile. His gaze twisted with complicated emotions. He was probably thinking, how could this woman, who once had to rely on him even to buy a decent dress, now have her work fiercely battled for by these arrogant people? Just as the bidding reached its peak and only 2 or 3 collectors remained in the tight contest, Felix Liu, who had been quietly seated beside me, suddenly lifted his bidding paddle with grace. The auctioneer's eyes lit up. Good, Mr. Liu, your bid is 12 million. Any higher offers? This price was already far beyond expectations. The room fell silent for a moment. Felix Liu remained composed, turning to me with a gentle smile. His voice was soft, yet clear enough for those in the front row to hear. Ira's first domestic auction piece is worth treasuring. In one sentence, it was both a confession and undeniable support. Finally, the gavel fell. Moonlit Lake was sold to Felix Liu for $12 million. The entire hall erupted in applause, with eyes turning toward us, filled with blessings and envy. I was somewhat surprised, but more than that, a wave of warmth surged through me. I knew he wasn't just bidding for the artwork, he was using this moment, in front of everyone, to crown me. As the applause subsided, the reception moved into an open mingling session. I stood up, preparing to head to the dressing room. Just as I stepped out of the main hall and into the relatively quiet corridor, a figure abruptly blocked my path. It was Elias Gu. He had somehow slipped away from his female companion and the others, waiting here. His eyes were bloodshot, carrying a look of desperate, reckless madness. Iris, his voice was rough and hoarse, as he tried to reach out and grab my arm. Let's talk. Just 5 minutes. No, 3 minutes is enough. I took a step back, evading his hand, frowning slightly. My tone was coldly distant and formal. Mr. Gu, is there something you need, Mr. Gu? Elias Gu seemed hurt by the name, looking at me in pain. Iris, don't call me that. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I saw you. I saw your designs. I saw how well you're doing now. I regret it, Iris. I regret it every single day. That Lily Lin, she lied to me. The child might not even be mine. I'm already doing a paternity test with her. There's no obstacle between us anymore. Please come back. I promise. I'll treat you better from now on. Better than that Felix Liu ever did. He was incoherent, hurriedly expressing regret and sincerity, as if I should grateful and return to his side the moment he turned back. I looked at his face, etched with pain and pleading, and suddenly felt an overwhelming absurdity. What he regretted, I suspected, wasn't me as a person, but the loss of an object that once belonged to him, now dazzling, and belonging to a man far more powerful. I smiled faintly, the smile devoid of warmth, carrying only a hint of pity and complete detachment. Elias Gu, you seem to have misunderstood a few things. I looked at his suddenly stiff expression and said slowly, first, how I'm doing is none of your business, and certainly not something you can judge or try to make up for. Second, whatever you and Lily Lin have, that's your business. I have no interest in it. Third, and most importantly, I paused, raised my eyes, and stared at him with clear, resolute gaze. My husband is Felix Liu. He is right here, in my heart, by my side. Please, don't say anything more that might cause misunderstanding or discomfort. Excuse me. With that, I gave a slight nod, walked past him, and moved straight ahead. The sound of my high heels striking the marble floor was crisp and resolute. Without a hint of hesitation, Irischen, Elias Gu growled behind me, his voice trembling with despair. Don't leave. You can't do this to me. We've been married for 3 years. I didn't look back. At the end of the corridor, Felix Liu had already been waiting, calm and poised, extending his hand toward me. I placed my hand into his palm, and warmth enveloped me instantly. Elias Gu stood frozen, watching helplessly as we walked away hand in hand, our silhouettes harmonious and perfectly matched, as if he were the most redundant, most ridiculous outsider. The auctioneer's congratulatory words to Mr. and Mrs. Liu seemed to echo in his ears, along with the faint murmurs of onlookers. So that's Mrs. Liu. What elegance! Elias Gu, wasn't he the one who tried to approach her just now? Doesn't he know where he stands now? I heard his company is in trouble, and his home life is a mess too. He clenched his fists violently, his nails digging deep into his palms, but he felt no pain, only the icy shame of plummeting from cloud to mire, publicly exposed and ridiculed by everyone, drowning in humiliation. He had originally come here seeking an opportunity to turn things around, only to witness with his own eyes how the woman he had abandoned had reached a height he could never attain, cherished like a precious gem by another man, while he himself had become a joke even worthy of being close. The lights of the charity dinner seemed to still flicker before his eyes, but the world after that night had completely changed color for Elias Gu, no longer the dazzling glamour of clinking glasses and bustling chatter. It was now a relentless, suffocating crisis. Starting the day after the banquet, bad news began to rain down on Elias Gu as if they had been prearranged. First, Yongcheng Construction, the major client with whom he had worked for 8 years and who contributed nearly a third of the company's annual profits, suddenly announced the termination of all renewal orders for the second half of the year, citing strategic adjustments. Elias Gu called them personally. But the other party's CEO mumbled evasively, finally revealing the truth. Mr. Gu, it's not that I'm not loyal to you, but you've offended someone you shouldn't have. The offer and terms they provided were simply too difficult to refuse. Maybe we'll cooperate again in the future. Someone I shouldn't have offended. Elias Gu's hand gripping the phone turned white at the knuckles. In an instant, Felix Liu's cold face flashed through his mind. Immediately afterward, the company's core plot development project in the Eastern New District, which was being pushed with nearly half of its working capital, got stuck at the final approval stage. The planning department issued over a dozen nearly stringent modification suggestions, demanding rectification within a specified time frame, otherwise the project would need to be retendered. Meanwhile, the previously agreed commercial loan from the bank was suddenly suspended, citing changes in risk assessment. The funding chain instantly tightens to its limit. The CFO rushes to his office 8 times a day, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Gu, next month's project payments, material costs, and employee salaries and bonuses. The money on hand will barely last 3 weeks. If the loan doesn't come through, or if Yongcheng's final payment isn't settled promptly, it never rains but it pours. On the third day, as the stock market opened, the share price of the Gu Group suddenly began to plummet without warning, plunging all the way down and triggering the circuit breaker mechanism within half an hour. Market rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the Gu Group was under investigation for violation operations. Others said its core project had fallen through. Even more outrageous rumors circulated, claiming that Elias Gu's personal life was in disarray, damaging the company's reputation. Elias Gu sat in his office, staring at the glaring green numbers on the screen and the chaotic interface. His eyes bloodshot, like a dying beast trapped in a cage. He smashed everything within reach, roaring at the PR department to suppress the news and the securities division to find out who was maliciously shorting the stock. The answer came back quickly, terse and brutal. A network of international offshore accounts operated in coordination, professional and ruthlessly efficient, with funds so substantial it was despair-inducing. The trail led to a level they couldn't possibly reach. Lu Qinzhou. Elias Gu spat the name out between clenched teeth, laced with deep hatred and a sliver of fear he refused to admit even to himself. It was him, it had to be him, just because he had tried to get close to Irishan at the banquet, just because he had once been Irishan's husband. This man was determined to destroy him completely. He wanted to fight back, but found his fists had nowhere to strike. Felix Liu's business empire was rooted overseas, his core operations seemingly unrelated to the Gu family. This level of asymmetric attack left him lacking even the qualifications to resist. The local connections he had cultivated over the years now fell into ambiguous silence. Phone calls went unanswered, or the responses were bureaucratic, expressing helpless sympathy. The Gu empire, once the source of his pride and confidence, seemed to have had its foundation ripped away overnight by an invisible giant hand, now teetering on collapse. And the origin of it all, seemingly, pointed to that woman he had once discarded like refuse, shame, anger, panic, and a faint regret tinged with absurdity, like poisonous vines entangling around his heart, tightening with each passing second. He couldn't collapse. Gu Corp was everything to him. Desperate and with no other options, a reckless idea emerged. Go to Irishan. Only she could save Gu Corp. Save him now. Felix Liu had done all of this, hadn't he, for her? If Irishan were only willing to speak. The thought filled him with unbearable shame. Worse than death, to bow down and beg for help from the woman he had once looked down upon and treated so casually, but cold reality stood before him. There seemed to be no other way. He used his last personal connections to finally track down Irish's temporary residence after her return to the country, not a hotel, but the Yunchi apartment complex located in the city center's most exclusive district. Known for its high security measures and privacy, it was Felix Liu's property. Elias Gu had been waiting downstairs at the apartment building for 2 whole days. He dared not go up. Security would never let him pass. He could only hide in his car like a humble stalker, staring intently at the entrance and exit. Finally, on the evening of the 3rd day, he saw the familiar black Maybach pulling into the underground garage. A few moments later, Irishan emerged alone from the apartment building. She was wearing a simple off-white knit sweater and long pants, carrying a reusable shopping bag, seemingly on her way to the nearby boutique supermarket. Felix Liu was not with her. Opportunity. Elias Gu, his heart pounding, immediately pushed open the car door and dashed forward. "Iris," he croaked, shouting and blocking her path. Irishan stopped, and upon seeing him, showed no surprise, only a distant indifference. She even took half a step back, creating some distance. "What do you want now, Mr. Gu?" Her voice was calm and steady, as if addressing an unimportant stranger. That tone and attitude stung Elias Gu again. Suppressing the humiliation in his chest, he forced his expression to appear sincere and pained. "Iris, I just want to talk to you, alone. Just a few minutes, please." Irishan gazed at him silently, her eyes devoid of hatred or emotion, carrying only a clarity that unsettled Elias Gu. As if she could see through all his desperate calculations, she said nothing, which he took as consent. Elias Gu spoke hurriedly, his voice rushed. "Iris, I know I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. For the past 3 years, I was blind, and I'm the one who betrayed you. You can blame me and hate me as much as you want, but Gu Group is my father's lifelong effort. It can't collapse. Felix Liu, Mr. Liu is eliminating Gu Group due to some misunderstandings. The bank has stopped lending. Clients are leaving, and the stock price is plummeting. Iris, I can't hold on anymore. For the sake of our past 3 years, please help me, help Gu Group. Go talk to Mr. Liu. Ask him to show mercy and let me off the hook. I promise. I'll never bother your lives again. I'll stay far away." He finished the words almost in a begging tone, something he had never done in his entire life. He stared intently at Irishan's face, hoping to see even a hint of softening, a trace of compassion. Irishan was silent for a moment after hearing this. The evening breeze brushed through her hair, and her profile appeared exceptionally calm in the twilight. Then, she slowly spoke, her voice still soft but each word clear. "Elias Gu, you seem to have misunderstood a few things again." Elias Gu's heart sank suddenly. Irishan said, "First, what Felix does is his business decision. I never intervene, nor do I have the right to intervene. Second, whether Gu Group collapses or not is your management problem. It has nothing to do with me, let alone any so-called emotional bond. Third," she raised her eyes, her gaze sharp and cold, landing on his face filled with urgency and desperation. Suddenly, she smiled faintly, a smile devoid of warmth, only a trace of almost pitying mockery. "Now you come to me, begging me for help, but think about it, over the past 3 years, where were you every time I needed you? When your mother treated me harshly, you were by Lily Lynn's side. When I was sick with fever, lying alone at home, you were celebrating Lily Lynn's birthday. Even at the end, when you needed me to step aside for Lily Lynn, you didn't even wait to notify me about the divorce. Instead, you issued it with a tone of charity and command." With every word she spoke, Elias Gu's complexion grew paler by a shade. "Your so-called emotional bond now." Irishan gently shook her head, as if brushing off a speck of dust, "is worthless in my eyes. Your predicament is entirely of your own making. It has nothing to do with me, nor with Felix. Please, don't appear before me again." After speaking, she lifted the bag and walked straight past him, her steps steady, without a single pause. Irishan, Eliascu suddenly turned, yelling at her retreating figure, his voice distorted by despair. "Are you really that heartless? Do you have to see me die? Have you been longing for this day all along? You..." Irishan did not turn back, nor did she even hesitate in her steps. Her silhouette vanished behind the bright glass doors of the apartment building, resolute as if she had never known him at all. Eliascu froze in place, like a sculpture stripped of its soul, as dusk fell and city lights began to glow. The warm glow of the bustling metropolis bathed him, yet it only cast a cold, faded gray upon his figure. She didn't even bother to hate him anymore. In her eyes, he had truly become nothing. This realization, more than Felix Louis' business sabotage, plunged him into overwhelming despair and cold numbness. At that moment, his phone began shaking violently. It was a call from an urgent company meeting, and also a hysterical call from his mother shouting at him, calling him useless, accusing him of ruining the family business, blaming him for ever getting involved with Lily Lynn, that doomed woman. All the voices converged into a piercing cacophony, assaulting the last remnants of his sanity. Eliascu clutched his head and crouched down, emitting a trapped animal-like whimper from his throat. It was over. Everything was over. Meanwhile, in the spacious and bright apartment on the top floor of Yunshi, Irishan placed the items she had bought, then walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The curling figure below looked as tiny as a black dot. Felix Liu emerged from the study, gently embracing her from behind, his chin resting on the top of her head. "He's gone." Irishan nestled into his arms, closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and slowly exhaled. She cleared out the last remnants of hesitation tied to the past, completely. Felix Louis' voice was soft yet resolute. "Don't worry, he won't have another chance to bother you." Irishan gave a soft nod, clasping the hand that encircled her waist. The city lights outside the window shone brightly, and that tiny speck of darkness quickly vanished, swallowed up without a trace. Eliascu had locked himself in his office for 2 full days. The heavy curtains were drawn tightly, blocking out all light and cutting him off from the outside world that suffocated him. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and alcohol. Papers scattered across the floor, and the computer screen flickered dimly, displaying the miserable green graph of the GU Group's stock price, almost completely stagnant. Barely moving, his phone kept vibrating, the screen flashing with one name after another: mother, lawyer, finance director, partners on the verge of turning against him. He didn't answer any of them. Like a wounded beast retreating into its cave to nurse its fatal injury, he had only the last ounce of strength left to wait for the final verdict. The most prominent spot on his desk held a brown paper file folder, sealed intact. It had been delivered this morning by his personal lawyer, who had left it with a gaze filled with complicated sympathy and a barely perceptible distance. A paternity test report. Eliascu stared blankly at the file folder, his eyes hollow. He both longed to rip it open immediately and discover definitive answers, yet feared what might lie inside. Those few thin pages not only determined a child's bloodline, but also whether the last remnants of Eliascu, his dignity, and his already crumbling world would finally shatter completely. He remembered Lily Lynn's tear-streaked, determined face at the maternity center, recalled his mother's endless affection for that child, and thought of how he himself had briefly felt a touch of paternal tenderness in front of that wrinkled little face. If, from the very beginning, it had all been a lie. Eliascu let out a sharp, hoarse sneer, snatching the file bag and violently tearing it open. Pulling out the report, he flipped directly to the last page, his gaze skimming over the complex genetic locus comparison data and fixating on the final conclusion section. DNA analysis concludes exclusion of biological fatherhood relationship between Eliascu, male, and sample A, infant. Exclude parent-child relationship. A mere line of text, like a red-hot soldering iron, seared into his retina, burning deep into his mind. Ha ha ha. Elias Gu first let out a low laugh, his shoulders shaking. Then the laughter grew louder and wilder, finally turning into a hysterical scream filled with endless pain and mockery. Ha ha. Good for you, Lily Lynn. Good for my son. Ha ha. He laughed until tears streamed down his face, his hand gripping the report paper trembling violently, crumpling the paper into a ball. So that's it. It turns out he, Elias Gu, had been nothing but a colossal joke from beginning to end. He drove his wife away for a bastard. He caused chaos and instability in the Gu family for a woman who lied through her teeth. And he had even become a lowly ant to be crushed underfoot in Felix Liu's eyes, all because of that bastard. All the anger, shame, the fury of being deceived, and the deeper, more painful self-hatred for his own blindness and ignorance erupted in that moment. He violently tore the report into pieces and flung them into the air. Shreds of paper fluttered down like a filthy snowfall, a grim tribute to his foolish past. At that exact moment, the phone he had thrown into the corner, silenced, suddenly lit up fiercely, not with a call, but with a flood of news alerts and social media notifications, bursting onto the screen like a virus. Elias Gu panted, his eyes red as he glanced over. Just one look, and the blood in his entire body seemed to freeze instantly. Explosive. Gu Group's young master Elias Gu suspected of being cheated on. Paternity test revealed, son not his biological child. Shocking scoop. Behind the overlooked wife's comeback, is the ex-husband now the one taking the fall? Elias Gu and Lily Lynn true love collapse. Father of child mystery unraveled. Gu Group stock could plunge again. Takeover guy Elias Gu speaks out. Former aristocratic prince now mocked globally as a joke. The headlines were more sensational one after another, each more vicious than the last. The accompanying images were none other than photos of the crucial conclusion page from the identification report he had just torn apart. There were even high-definition surveillance screenshots, leaked from somewhere, showing Lily Lynn embracing a mysterious man outside a hotel in the eastern part of the city during her pregnancy, plus a candid shot of his embarrassed, pleading face when he stopped Iris Shan outside the charity gala. Who leaked it? The lawyer, the hospital, or Felix Liu? Elias Gu, his mind erupted with a deafening bang, and the last thread of rationality snapped completely. He lunged forward, grabbing his phone and trembling fingers opening the most trending finance and entertainment hybrid headline. The comment section had already exploded, with tens of thousands of new comments flooding in every minute. Netizens said, "Oh my god, even TV dramas wouldn't dare to act like this. Didn't the official reports all claim that Mr. Gu and that Miss Lin were soulmates who triumphed over feudal families? Turns out it's actually true. Green Hat invincible," Netizen B said, laughing so hard. How arrogant that old lady from the Gu family used to be. Always claiming the original wife was no good and praising the younger one for being so thoughtful and capable of giving birth to sons. Now does her face hurt? The grandson isn't even hers. Ha, Netizen C said. Does anyone care about that former Mrs. Gu, you know, the designer Shan who briefly appeared at the banquet? After leaving that scumbag husband, she's thriving both in her career and love life. She's like a real-life version of Neo-Huru Iris, a fantasy novel heroine finally stepping into reality, Netizen D said. Elias Gu is really suffering double losses now. His company is going down, he's lost all face. And he's been raising someone else's kid for so long, but I feel zero sympathy. He totally deserved it. How did he treat the original spouse back then? This is just poetic justice, Netizen E said. Breaking news, the area downstairs of the Gu Group has been surrounded by reporters. I heard Elias Gu's mother fainted on the spot upon hearing the news and was rushed to the hospital. Lily Lin's apartment is also surrounded. This is truly the drama of the year. Humiliation, mockery, schadenfreude. Every comment was like a poison whip, lashing fiercely at Elias Gu's already shattered pride through the screen. His vision blurred, blood surged to his head, and a bitter sweetness rose in his throat. Bang! He slammed his phone against the opposite wall, shattering it into pieces instantly. He let out a cry like a trapped beast, frantically knocking everything off his desk: computers, pen holders, decorations. Crashed to the floor in a cacophony of broken pieces. It was over. All over: his career, his reputation, his family, even the last shred of dignity. Everything was utterly shattered in this moment, crushed by the exposure of the identification report and the relentless mockery across the internet, trampled into the mud and spit upon repeatedly. He didn't know how long he had stayed in the darkness and chaos, until the office door was suddenly slammed open with a loud bang. It wasn't his secretary or security guard. It was his mother, Mrs. Gu. Her appearance was no better than Elias Gu's, the hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, face as pale as paper, and the expensive suit still carrying the stains of medicinal fluids from the hospital. She must have seen the news immediately after waking up and charged here without hesitation. As soon as she entered, seeing the room in complete disarray and her son's ghastly, inhuman appearance, she froze for a moment. Then all her emotions erupted into a frenzy of anger and venom. Directed straight at Elias Gu. "Elias Gu, you cursed wretch, look at what you've done." Gu's mother's shrill voice pierced the air. She took a few steps forward and raised her hand, slapping Elias Gu hard across the face. Bang! A crisp, loud sound. Elias Gu was hit hard, turning his head to the side, his cheek burning with pain. Yet he felt no response. Numb, Gu's mother trembled all over, pointing at him and scolding, her voice shaky with anger and humiliation. "It's all your fault. I told you to live well with Irishan back then, but you wouldn't listen. You had to go after that Lily Lynn, that cheap fox. Now look at this. Our Gu family's face is completely ruined by you. Where do I put my old face? How can I ever go out and see people again? The whole city, the whole internet is watching and laughing at our Gu family, laughing at us for raising a bastard as a treasure." The more she spoke, the angrier she became, beating her chest and sobbing uncontrollably. "The company is about to collapse too. Those hypocrites won't even answer our calls now. It's all your fault. For that dirty woman, you've ruined our good family business. Why did I ever give birth to such an ignorant fool? Irishan might not be perfect, but at least she was properly married into our family, and now she's basking in glory with Felix Liu, while we've become the laughingstock of the entire world. Are you satisfied now?" Every word of her reproach struck precisely at Elias Gu's most painful place. He stood immobile, like a statue of clay and wood, allowing his mother to cry, scream, and pound on him, only the last glimmer of light in his bloodshot eyes extinguished, leaving behind a dead gray emptiness and a darkness that grew wildly. Yes, he had become the biggest joke, and that Irishan, whom he had once despised, now stood high above, enjoying the admiration and envy of everyone. Why, hate, like the most venomous vine, crazy spread across this wasteland. Not only did he hate Lily Lynn and Felix Liu, but even vaguely resented his mother, who was scolding him now, and everyone who mocked him, and at the deepest level, that suppressed, twisted hatred slowly pointed toward the very source that had brought him to this state. Irishan, if she had obeyed quietly, divorced calmly, not attached herself to Felix Liu, not become so brilliant, would he then not have been compared so unfavorably? Would Felix Liu not have taken revenge? Would none of this have happened? This absurd thought, in his completely unbalanced mind, gradually took root, becoming the only warped support keeping him from completely collapsing. Gu's mother, exhausted from scolding, collapsed on the ground, sobbing softly. Elias Gu, however, slowly raised his head and looked at the shattered remains of the phone on the ground. The blackened screen reflected his cruel, ghostly expression at that moment. His lips moved silently, uttering a few words. Irishan, meanwhile, at the other end of the city, the ground floor of the upscale apartment where Lily Lynn lived was already surrounded by media and onlookers drawn by the commotion. Curses, shouts, and the flashing of cameras created a sea of noise, drowning her in endless humiliation and panic, and as she desperately dialed Elias Gu's number, all she received was the endless tone of an unreachable line. The real storm has just begun, and Elias Gu, at the very eye of the storm, stripped of all his glamour, is slowly sliding into an even deeper abyss of madness. The paternity scandal swept through the entire city like a storm, pinning Elias Gu and Lily Lin to the pillars of shame. After sustained trading halts, the shares of the Gu Group had plummeted to the point where they were virtually worthless. Creditors blocked the company entrance, and court summonses flew in like snowflakes. Elias Gu's assets were swiftly frozen, and even the villa that once symbolized status and identity was soon to be seized and auctioned off by the bank. Under the immense shame and shock, Gu's mother suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. Half paralyzed, with only one hand still functional, she weakly pointed at Elias Gu, who came to visit, more like checking whether she still had any worth left, and her hazy eyes were filled with resentment, yet she could not even utter a complete sentence of anger. Elias Gu did not go to the hospital. He lived like a ghost, hiding in a short-term rental apartment in a filthy corner of the city. Rented with his last bit of cash, the room was cramped and suffocating. Filled with the stench of mildew and days-old takeout trash, he was unkempt, with hollow eyes and a beard matted with dirt. His expensive suit, once a symbol of his status, was now wrinkled and stained. He smashed his phone and used only a broken laptop, obsessively refreshing online posts, endless mockery and exposés about him, like a self-inflicted torment. Each comment, every photo of him with Lily Lin, and that bastard, once heartwarming, now bitterly ironic, felt like a dull knife repeatedly cutting into his already shattered nerves. In stark, hellish contrast, the occasional pop-up headlines screamed about the fresh-faced designer Shin and business tycoon Felix Liu, a divine couple. In the photos, Iris Shin beamed brightly, nestled beside Felix Liu, attending high-profile events, her design studio thriving, her name linked with talent, independence, and lucky. The more radiant they were, the more it made him, Elias Gu, look like a rotten, stinking rat in the gutter. Why? Elias Gu stared at the screen, his eyes bloodshot, gurgling sounds emerging from his throat. Why did I end up like this? Well, you all live so well, Iris Shin. It's all you, all because of you. Extreme failure, humiliation, and jealousy, coupled with desperate hopelessness, finally consumed his last remaining sanity. A crazy, sinister thought, like a poisonous mushroom, blossomed and expanded in his twisted mind. Grab Iris Shin. Once I have her, Felix Liu will definitely fold. I'll get the money, I'll turn things around, and make that pair of scum suffer the same agony. Once the thought took hold, it could no longer be suppressed. Like the most treacherous venomous snake, he dragged his broken body, using his remaining money to buy anonymous phone cards and a nearly scrap van on the black market. He lurked near the Yunxi apartment complex day and night, observing Iris Shin's comings and goings. He discovered that Felix Liu protected her well, always having drivers and bodyguards accompanying her, leaving her few opportunities to go out alone. But he had plenty of patience. More accurately, madness gave him obsessive patience. Finally, he waited for an opportunity. Iris Shin's studio assistant called, saying a batch of urgent special fabric had arrived at the airport cargo station, and she had to personally go pick it up with her ID. While that day Felix Liu happened to have a crucial international meeting and couldn't accompany her, Elias Gu watched Iris Shin sit alone in the car that was usually driven by a bodyguard but today had only the driver. As it left the apartment, his heart pounding wildly in his chest, mixed with excitement and the thrill of destruction, he knew the opportunity had come. He followed behind in that dilapidated van, staying a good distance away until he reached the relatively secluded area of the airport cargo zone. When Iris Shin's car stopped at a temporary checkpoint and the driver got out to speak with the staff, Elias Gu knew he could wait no longer. He slammed on the accelerator, and the dilapidated van roared with a harsh sound, swerving crookedly to cut in front of the sedan Irishman was riding in. Narrowly stopping just ahead of it, the driver and staff were startled by the sudden situation. Before they could react, Elias Gu had already opened the car door, clutching a rough spring knife bought from the black market, his eyes bloodshot, and lunged at the back seat like a madman. "Exien, get down here," he roared, smashing the car window with the hilt of his knife. The Irishman inside the car was clearly shocked too, but she didn't panic and scream as Elias Gu had expected. Her face turned slightly pale. Yet she quickly shrank toward the other side of the car door, her hand reaching for her bag, where Felix Liu had placed an emergency alarm device for her. The driver reacted, yelled in anger, and rushed forward to stop him. Elias Gu turned around and wildly waved the knife, pushing the driver back, then smashed the window even more frantically. "Come out, or I'll kill you. Come with me." Just at that moment, a sudden and unexpected change occurred, next to the freight station. An ordinary-looking warehouse roller shutter door suddenly lifted with a loud clatter. 3 or 4 black off-road vehicles shot out like crouching leopards, instantly surrounding Elias Gu and his battered van. The car doors flung open, and 7 or 8 men in black combat gear, agile as lightning, leaped out. Though they weren't carrying guns, their fierce, efficient presence immediately took full control of the scene. Before Elias Gu could comprehend what was happening, his wrist was violently twisted by a powerful force, pain shooting through him as his knife clattered to the ground. His hands were yanked behind his back, and his face was pressed hard against the cold, rough surface of the car, leaving him completely immobilized. You people, who are you? Let me go. I'm Elias Gu." He was both terrified and enraged, struggling and shouting in vain. No one paid him any attention. A man leading the group quickly walked to Irishman's car. Bowing slightly with respect, "Madam, you've been frightened, Mr. Liu instructed us to handle any extraordinary situation." Irishman had already pushed open the car door and stepped out, her face still somewhat pale, but her eyes had regained their composure. She glanced at Elias Gu, who was being forcefully held down, disheveled and helpless like a discarded dog, and the last flicker of emotion stirred by the past in her eyes completely stilled, leaving only cold indifference. "I'm fine," she said calmly, nodding to the man in front. "Thank you for your hard work. Handle it as Felix said." "Yes, ma'am." Elias Gu, hearing this, struggled to lift his head, his bloodshot eyes glaring fiercely at Irishman, filled with disbelief and venom. You already knew. You set me up." Irishman stopped a few paces in front of him, looking down at him from above, like observing a worm wriggling in the mud. She spoke slowly, her voice clearly reaching his ears. "Elias Gu, you've reached this point through your own choices, again and again. No one has set you up. It's you who've led your life into a dead end. Bullshit. It was you and Felix Liu who forced me," Elias Gu roared. "If it weren't for you, how could I have ended up like this?" Irishman gently shook her head, no longer even feeling the urge to argue with him. She turned around and said to the official, "Call the police. Possession of a weapon, attempted kidnapping, threatening physical safety. There should be ample evidence." "Irishman, you can't do this to me. I'm your husband. We're not divorced yet." Elias Gu howled in despair, making one last desperate struggle. Irishman paused slightly, not turning back, leaving only a cold sentence floating in the wind. "It won't be long now." Sirens wailed closer and closer. The police arrived swiftly, facing the clear evidence provided by Felix Liu's team, including surveillance footage of Elias Gu lurking and tracking for days, records of purchasing knives on the black market, and a full recording of the recent attempt at violent abduction. Elias Gu's defense proved feeble and powerless. He was handcuffed and tossed into the police car like trash, in the final moment before being shoved into the vehicle. He glanced back one last time. Irishman had already sat back in the car. the window slowly rising, cutting off his bitter gaze. The men in black quickly got into their car and drove away, leaving only police officers and his old, broken van behind, as if the thrilling capture just moments before had never happened. The cold handcuffs pressed tightly against his skin, and the police car sped away. Elias Gu watched the city's glittering landscape rapidly recede through the window, finally realizing with complete clarity he had lost, utterly and irredeemably. With no hope of ever recovering, once the golden boy, the young master of the Gu group, now he was a suspect in an attempted kidnapping, about to face trial, yet the ex-wife he had abandoned had risen from the ruins he himself had created, becoming a light he could never reach. Regret, resentment, perhaps both, but mostly, there was a cold, endless despair, the feeling that everything was in vain. Plunging into an abyss of darkness, he knew that the era belonging to Elias Gu, along with the man himself, had completely and miserably come to an end. A few days later, the Gu Group officially filed for bankruptcy liquidation with the court. The major media reported the news on very small sections, as the public's attention had already been drawn to new gossip. Only a few people remembered that the once arrogant young Master Gu was now imprisoned, facing a long-term sentence behind bars. And Iris Shen's divorce agreement was finally approved by the court, taking effect at the fastest possible speed. From then on, she and the man named Elias Gu had no legal or personal connection whatsoever. It was rare for winter in London to have sunlight piercing through the clouds and casting shimmering golden reflections onto the River Thames. The studio's heating was turned up high, filling the air with the warm scent of freshly cut wool fabric, and a faint, recently acquired aroma of orange blossom essential oil diffused through the space. I sat in front of the spacious design table, holding a measuring tape in my hand, but my mind was elsewhere. My gaze fell on the open sketchbook, not on any design drafts, but on a few casually drawn, round and adorable outlines of babies, with scattered words written beside them: soft, cloud, star, tiny hands. Felix Liu pushed open the door, holding neither documents nor a drink. He walked behind me, his arms slipping around me from behind, gently hugging me, his chin resting atop my head. Remaining silent for a moment, Felix Liu said, "Iris, shall we go to the hospital later?" "Okay." His voice was soft, gently tinged with a careful tenderness I had never heard before, and a barely noticeable nervousness. I leaned against his chest, feeling his steady, strong heartbeat intertwining with the fluttering, anxious pulse in my own chest. I put down the measuring tape, turned around, and looked up at him. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling window, casting a warm glow across his deep, expressive eyes and brow. I nodded, my throat tightening slightly, but my voice carried a smile. "Yeah, I was just about to tell you. Actually, I didn't need to go to the hospital. My heart already had about 8 or 9/10 of certainty. The delayed period, recent fatigue and drowsiness, sudden sensitivity to certain smells, and that indescribable, faint, wonderful change deep within my body. But I needed that definitive answer, needed to face it with him, to welcome the most wonderful verdict that was about to shift the course of our lives." Felix Liu's eyes lit up instantly, like stars scattering across the night sky. He said nothing, just tightened his arms, pulling me deeper into his embrace. A gentle, tender kiss landed on my forehead. I felt a barely perceptible tremble in his body. On the way to the hospital, he kept clutching my hand tightly. His palm was slightly damp, unlike its usual dry and steady feel. This man, who had faced any crisis in the business world with composure and never lost his cool, now, because of a possibility that had not yet been confirmed, was trembling with nervousness like a young boy. The examination went quickly, when the kind female doctor, holding the test results, smiled and said to us, "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Liu, you're going to be parents." According to the data, the baby is around 6 weeks old and very healthy. I could clearly see Felix Liu swallow hard, his eyes turning red visibly fast. He gripped my hand so tightly that it hurt, but then, in the next moment, he hastily let go, looking at me helplessly, like a child who had done something wrong. Then, he suddenly turned to the doctor, his voice slightly hoarse and urgent. "Doctor, my wife, how is she? What should we pay attention to? Will pregnancy be difficult? What preparations do we need to make? Can we hear the baby's heartbeat now, or do we need to wait a little longer?" He asked a barrage of questions in one breath, his logic unusually disoriented. The female doctor couldn't help but laugh, patiently answering each of them. I sat beside him, watching this usually calm man become completely flustered by a tiny new life just beginning to take shape. A wave of warmth welled up inside me, almost overwhelming, on the way home. Felix Lou still tightly held my hand, while his other hand gently, almost reverently, rested on my still flat abdomen. His palm was warm, conveying a sense of calm through the fabric. Felix Lou said, "Iris, thank you." His voice was low and solemn, like making the most earnest promise. I leaned against his shoulder, my nose tingling with emotion, yet I smiled. "Felix, it's a gift we made together," he hummed softly, saying nothing more, simply holding me even tighter. The car grew quiet, filled only with the faint sounds of steady movement and the intertwined, blissfully overwhelming breaths of us both. The days that followed felt like being immersed in honey. Felix Lou almost cancelled all unnecessary cross-border trips and social engagements, compressing and adjusting his work as much as possible. At home, there soon appeared numerous pregnancy guides, nutritional recipes, and soothing music and picture books he had unearthed from somewhere. Said to be excellent for calming a pregnant woman's mood. He always notices my slight needs before I do. Before I even feel a bit hungry, a warm, nutritious snack is already prepared. When I start to feel a sore back, his perfectly timed massage is already on my back. He's even started learning about baby care, with several books like The Complete Guide to Newborn Care sitting in his study, looking oddly out of place among his usual financial reports. As serious as if he were researching a cross-border merger. My studio hasn't stopped operating, but the pace has slowed down. Felix Lou hired an extremely professional assistant and health consultant to ensure that I could continue doing what I love without overexerting myself. Instead of running dry, my design inspiration has become even richer and softer, fueled by this profound joy and anticipation. I've begun unconsciously incorporating more rounded lines, warm tones, and vibrant, life-filled elements into my designs. At 3 months of pregnancy, we entered a relatively stable phase. After a routine ultrasound, we received our baby's first photo, a small, yet clearly human-shaped image. Although still blurry, that wonderful sense of connection brought tears to my eyes instantly. Felix Lou carefully holding the black and white image, he stared at it for a long, long time, then solemnly affixed it to the head of the bed. That night, he held me close in what would become our future children's room. He had already started personally overseeing the renovation, planning where to place the crib, where to set up the play area, and where we could watch the stars, rambling on and on. The light was warm, his voice soft. I leaned against him, listening to his steady heartbeat and those trivial and beautiful blueprints of the future, feeling as though life had reached a completeness so perfect it seemed almost unreal. I know that the last traces of the past must be completely swept away, not for revenge, but to give our children a truly clean and clear beginning. I leaned against Felix Lou's chest and whispered, "Felix, has Elias Gu's verdict come down yet?" Felix Lou's hand, which had been gently stroking my hair, paused for a moment before resuming its soft motion. He let out a low, his tone flat and indifferent, as if recounting some unimportant old news. "He's down. Conspiracy to kidnap." endangering public safety, and involvement in some economic crimes, multiple charges, 15 years, he appealed, but the evidence was conclusive. The chances of a reduced sentence are virtually zero. 15 years, enough time for a spirited youth to become a weary middle-aged man, enough time for the ever-changing world outside to completely forget him. I fell silent for a moment, feeling neither satisfaction nor pity. Only a complete stillness. That nightmare, finally, had vanished without even the faintest echo remaining. Felix Liu looked down at me, his gaze clear. "Do you want to go see?" I shook my head, pressing my face against his chest. "No, I just feel it's time to put a full stop to it. Not for Elias Gu, but for myself, for our child to come." Felix Liu understood. He kissed the top of my head without asking any more. A few days later, an anonymous email with no sender information was sent to a monitored email account designated for inmate communication with family members at a specific prison. The message was extremely simple, just one photo. The photo showed sunlight filtering through the vines of a glass greenhouse, casting speckled patterns of light. I was wearing a comfortable white maxi dress, sitting slightly turned to the side, my hands gently clasped over my slightly protruding abdomen. I was looking down with a serene, deeply content smile on my lips. Felix Liu stood behind me, leaning forward slightly. One hand gently cradled my abdomen, while the other rested on my shoulder. He glanced sideways at me, his eyes brimming with affection and tenderness, almost overflowing the frame. On our ring fingers, matching wedding rings gleamed under the sunlight, subtle, yet timeless. Elias. There was no caption accompanying the photo, yet anyone could see it. A couple immersed in the immense joy of becoming parents, a picture capturing the core of a fresh, warm, and hopeful family. The email was checked, printed, and then delivered to the recipient according to procedure. Inside the high walls of the prison, time seemed to stand still. Elias Gu sat on a cold bench, his gaze blankly fixed on the small patch of gray sky visible through the iron-barred window. 15 years of prison sentence weighed on him like an invisible mountain, crushing all vitality from his once fiery spirit. His former arrogance, pride, resentment, and madness had all been eroded by the monotony, humiliation, and despair of day after day, leaving only an emotionless shell. A guard approached and tossed a printed sheet onto the table in front of him, speaking in a matter-of-fact tone. "Elias Gu, your letter." Elias Gu slowly moved his eyes and glanced at the paper. Who would be writing to him? His mother. She had been taken away by distant relatives after suffering a stroke and had not been heard from for years. Lily Lin, that woman who had ruined everything for him, she probably had long since fled to some unknown place. He numbly picked up the piece of paper. The moment his gaze touched the photo, his entire body was struck by a high-voltage current. Stiff, trembling, his pupils suddenly contracted to needle points. The person in the photo was Irishan and Felix Liu. They. His eyes locked onto Irishan's distinctly rounded abdomen, fixed on the radiant, maternal happiness in her smile, an expression he had never seen before, one he could hardly imagine, and upon Felix Liu's possessive and protective posture, a sudden, metallic sweetness surged up his throat, and Elias Gu suddenly spat a mouthful of blood, speckles splattering onto the printed paper, spreading a vivid patch of red. His vision darkened in waves, his ears buzzed, and his heart felt as if it had been seized, crushed by an invisible hand. Child, she and Felix Liu's child, they are so happy, so complete, and what about himself? Imprisoned, deserted by all, with nothing left, like a filthy joke. Ho, 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 a grotesque, saw-like sound rattled from his throat. He wanted to cry, but no tears would come. He wanted to laugh, but his face contorted in agony, the ultimate jealousy, regret, and despair, the final. Delusional illusion shattered by this photograph, merged into the most poisonous sap, corroding what little soul he had left. The blood-stained printed paper slipped from his trembling hands and floated to the ground. In the photo, Irish smile, set against the bloodstains, appeared especially glaring, like a red-hot dagger, plunging deep into his already riddled heart, then burning the last vestige of his meaning into ash. He suddenly curled up, clutching his head with both hands, letting out a sob choked to the limit, yet more piercing than a wail, as his entire body trembled like the last withered leaf in an autumn wind, completely finished. Meanwhile, at my home in London, I was leaning on Felix Lou's chest, looking through the latest, clearer 4D ultrasound images of the baby. The little one seemed quite active, moving its tiny hands around. Felix Lou pointed at a blurry outline on the screen, his voice unusually soft. "Look, Iris. This is the baby's nose. It looks just like yours." I smiled and leaned in closer, my heart overflowing with warmth, no trace of gloom left. The sunlight outside was perfect, glowing warmly through the window. The shadows of the past had long since been dispelled by this radiant light, vanishing without a trace. Our future holds only each other and this precious gift bestowed upon us by fate. 5 years is enough time to change many things. For example, this house with a small garden in London has transformed from a meticulously decorated new home into a vibrant haven filled with traces of daily life and laughter. In a corner of the garden, there is a small, colorful plastic slide and swing, and on the nearby soil, a few sunflower seedlings are planted at odd angles. This is a project personally managed by little Enzo Lou, for example. My design studio has grown from a solo workstation to an independent brand, Shin's Whisper. With a team of over a dozen talented designers and a solid reputation in the industry, we specialize in blending Eastern tranquility with modern comfort fabrics, not only establishing ourselves firmly in London but also gaining a foothold in boutiques in Paris and Milan. As for myself, after giving birth to Enzo, my creative inspiration seems to have entered a new phase. My designs have become warmer and more powerful. Last year, I even won a prestigious award for emerging designers. For example, this little person beside me, Mom, look, a butterfly, a clear, young voice, brimming with excitement, rang out in the garden. I put down the gardening shears in my hand and turned to look. My Enzo, wearing the little floral pants I made for her, with her soft, slightly curly black hair, was standing on tiptoe, pointing at a distant cluster of blooming lavender. Her little face was rosy with excitement. A white cabbage butterfly was perched on the purple flower spikes, its wings gently fluttering. Sunlight bathed her, casting a fluffy golden edge around her entire figure. Those jet-black eyes, so strikingly like those of Felix Lou, sparkled with pure curiosity and joy, filled with wonder at this new world. "Ah, Mommy sees it. It's a butterfly." I smiled, walked over, and crouched down to look with her. Felix Lou stepped out of the house, holding 2 sun hats. He came forward first, gently placing a wide-brimmed one on my head, then crouched down to put the smaller one on his daughter's head. His movements were natural and practiced, his gaze so tender it seemed to drip with warmth. Felix Lou asked Enzo, Nyen, "Do you like butterflies?" Enzo nodded vigorously, answering in a soft, childish yet earnest voice, "Yes, Dad. Why is it white?" "The book says butterflies come in many colors," Felix Lou patiently explained. "There are many kinds of butterflies, and this is just one of them. When Nyen grows a little older, Daddy will take you to the Natural History Museum. There are butterfly specimens from all over the world, more than what you can see in the garden." Okay. Enzo clapped her hands happily, then turned and hugged me tightly. "Mommy goes too." "All right, we'll all go." I embraced her soft little body, kissed her cheek that carried a faint scent of milk, and felt my heart soften, letting go completely. Such a morning, an ordinary, warm, and full of trivial yet genuine happiness. This is my life, my entire world. As for everything that once happened in that city across the ocean, that person, those matters, they've long been blurred by time, faded to the point of no longer even qualifying as nightmares. A few days later, the 3 of us boarded a flight to Switzerland. This time, it wasn't an escape or work, but purely a family vacation. Felix Liu said. The summer beneath the Alps is beautiful, fresh air, perfect for Nian Nian to run, jump, and play, and perfect for me to relax and find inspiration. The first-class cabin was spacious. Enzo was on a long-haul flight for the first time, initially excited, peering out the porthole for a long time at the sea of clouds, asking 1,000 whys. After the initial excitement passed, she ate something and then rubbed her eyes and fell asleep in my arms. Felix Liu adjusted the seat to make it more comfortable for me to hold her, and kindly covered us with a blanket. The plane flew steadily in the stratosphere, with an endless sea of clouds visible outside the window, glowing in magnificent golden-red hues under the sunlight, like a burning, silent ocean. I gently patted my daughter, my gaze drifting to the window, lost in thought. Felix Liu seemed to sense something, reached out and gently took my hand beneath the blanket. His hand was warm and dry, carrying a reassuring strength. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured, his voice strikingly clear and gentle amid the steady white noise of the engine. I snapped back to the present, smiling at him and shaking my head. "Nothing, just how quickly time passes, so fast that the pain and struggles I once thought were etched into my bones now feel as distant as someone else's story from a previous life." Felix Liu gazed at me intently, those eyes that could see through everything now brimming with complete understanding and acceptance. He didn't press further, merely holding my hand a little more tightly. "It's all over now, Iris," he murmured, his tone both declarative and promising. "Everything from now on will be good days." I leaned against his shoulder, closing my eyes, feeling the clean, pleasant scent of him and the steady breathing of our daughter. Yes, it was all over. The plane began to descend slowly. Breaking through the clouds, the scenery below gradually came into focus. Endless snow-capped mountains, deep green forests, gem-like lakes, and small towns scattered amidst them, like fairy tale building blocks. Just as the plane was about to land at Zurich Airport, the moment the wheels touched the runway and sent a slight tremor through the aircraft, a fragmented memory, almost forgotten, flashed unexpectedly into my mind. Years ago, also at an airport, also landing, I had stood alone, carrying a simple suitcase, following the crowd out of the arrivals hall, stepping into the unfamiliar, damp, icy air, with a heart filled with fear for the future yet forced to keep going. At that time, I probably never dreamed that one day I would return to this land with such a completely different state of mind, by the side of my beloved husband, holding our adorable daughter, with no more shadows in my heart, only full anticipation for the journey ahead. The plane came to a steady stop. The door opened, and a fresh breeze carrying the scent of summer grass and distant snow-capped peaks flowed in. Enzo also woke up, rubbing his eyes drowsily, and when he saw the foreign scenery outside the window, he became excited again. "Daddy, Mommy, have we arrived? Is this the place with chocolate and cowbells?" Felix Liu smiled and carried her over. "We're here. Nian Nian is so smart. This is Switzerland." We followed the flow of people off the plane and stepped onto the jet bridge. Felix Liu, one arm holding our daughter and the other naturally resting on my waist. I held Enzo's small hand, and the three of us formed a complete and stable world. Emerging from the arrivals hall, the car waiting to pick us up had been ready for some time. The driver courteously opened the car door, settling into the comfortable vehicle. The car smoothly left the airport and merged into the traffic, heading toward the Alps. I took one final look at the airport buildings rapidly receding through the window. That place, once home to my awkwardness, pain, and final decisive farewell, now under the bright sunlight, was just an ordinary transportation hub, no different from any other airport. The last faint trace of emotional resistance tied to the past was also utterly crushed by the rolling wheels, scattering into the wind. From now on, the sky is boundless, and there will be no more entanglements. My future, my happiness, all my love and care, all are right here, in this moment, in my husband's steady profile, in my daughter's curious smile, in our tightly clasped hands, and in every ordinary yet shining day we are about to face together, the car speeds onto the highway, leaving the city far behind. Up ahead, the snow-capped peaks of the Alps shine under the blue sky, glowing with a sacred light, as if crowning our new journey.